Honourable Member for Dennery North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise from the proverbial opposition benches for the first time in my short political and parliamentary career to contribute to a debate on the estimates of revenue and expenditure, or what the average St. Lucian refers to as the budget debate. Notwithstanding that I rise from the opposition benches, Madam Speaker, but very critically and more significantly, I rise once again as the duly elected parliamentary representative for the progressively vibrant and purpose-driven constituency of Dennery North. It is an honor that was first bestowed upon me, Madam Speaker, at the historic elections of November 2011. It was then that the people of the Mabuya Valley bypassed 4 other candidates and in some cases rejected them to repose their confidence in my ability to represent their interest in the parliament of this country. This covenant, Madam Speaker, was renewed on June 6, 2016, an election which the United Workers' Party won. We lost many of the seats that we held whilst in government. And I can recall, Madam Speaker, as the results came through on radio and television, many of our seats were falling. But in Dennery North, we stood firm and we survived the avalanche. Madam Speaker, the people of Dennery North have demonstrated over the years that they have an appreciation for good representation. Whether they are supporters of the United Workers' Party or supporters of the St. Lucian Labour Party, they have proclaimed to all and sundry that the last 5 years under the St. Lucian Labour Party have been the best that they've enjoyed as a constituency. Madam Speaker, we had a work program that covered every nook and cranny of that particular constituency. And I remember on the night as the results came through, P1, which is Grand Riviere, was the first to be called and declared. The United Workers' Party candidate, Jimmy Henry, won by over 100 votes. P5 came in, Madam Speaker, as the second polling division to be declared. Earlier, and Madam Speaker, the premature celebrations started until the figures from Dennery Riviere and Richford came in, and all celebrations had to be cut short, and the supporters of the St. Lucian Labour Party had to be given room, had to be given space to celebrate. And so today, Madam Speaker, with your indulgence, I want to take the opportunity to once again express my most profound gratitude to the people of Oleon, Tamazo, Dibonnaire, Grand Riviere, Grand Ravine, Larissus, Gardet, Belmont, and Dennery Riviere, and to tell them, Madam Speaker, how grateful I am for the opportunity that they've given to me to represent them in this honorable House. Madam Speaker, the estimates of expenditure and revenue for 2017-2018, or what we refer to as the budget, can best be described as a bounce and draw budget or a hand-to-mouth budget. Hand-to-mouth in the sense, Madam Speaker, that it does not suggest that there will be any form of continuity or long-term programming to deal with the issues that confront our country today. For a government, after 10 short months, Madam Speaker, the number of mistakes, the number of missteps, the number of ministers who have demonstrated time and again that they are just not up to the task, Madam Speaker, is something that worries not just us on the opposition benches, but the entire populace. And it is time that the Prime Minister begins to understand that he is no longer functioning as the political leader of the United Workers' Party, but instead he is the Prime Minister for all of St. Lucia, irrespective of people's religious persuasions or political affiliation. The Prime Ministership comes with a tremendous responsibility. And whereas it is okay, or it appears to be okay for some of the members of his cabinet to posture and behave as if they have no care in the world for people who do not support them, Madam Speaker, the Prime Minister's disposition ought to be separate and apart from what is being espoused, what is being communicated, and what is coming across from some of the members of his government. Madam Speaker, the budget is stuffed with a lot of programs, recycled programs. Now, I remember when I was assigned to the Ministry of Youth Development and Sports, a very young minister, very inexperienced in government. I always looked for the final figures under the various heads within my ministry. But I understood very, very early that not every figure you see on the books will actually translate into the implementation of projects. And it was the member for Choiseul who made the point earlier on that programs to be funded by bonds, and it's a point that was further accentuated by the member for Vieux North, that the programs to be funded by bonds are programs that you never certain will happen. And the reason is simple. You do not control the situation in the financial markets. And therefore, you can never be guaranteed that your bonds and your instruments will find favor with those persons out there with the monies that you're trying to attract and the monies that you're trying to get to finance your programs. So that when we see programs, Madam Speaker, spread across ministries, and we're being told that the source of funding must be the sale of bonds, we know that given the fiscal situation in this country today, a lot of those programs will not be implemented. And so, Madam Speaker, I expect for there to be a lot of violated expectations from St. Lucians. I expect for a lot of people to be disappointed. And I am not one who's going to come here, Madam Speaker, and wish things that are not progressive and things that are not for the development of our country. I want to see St. Lucia do well, irrespective of who the Prime Minister is and irrespective of who happens to be the parliamentary representative for Dennery and the other constituency. And Madam Speaker, I say this with all the sincerity that I can muster. But the government must understand that as an opposition, we have a legitimate stake in what is happening with respect to decision-making and the way forward for our country. The Prime Minister, in very recent times, Madam Speaker, told the country that St. Lucia was broke. And I asked myself, where had the Prime Minister been all those years? That it is only now he is learning that the country is broke. And what he meant is that we do not have sufficient financial resources to execute the programs that will impact our people in a very positive way. And we said that to all of St. Lucia when we were in government. We called in the trade unions. We spoke to the churches. We called the youth groups. We engaged civil society organizations. And we told them what the situation was. And instead of joining forces with the government at the time, when you had an opportunity, instead, you saw a chance to score cheap political points. Instead of telling people the truth, you promised ching-ching in the pocket. Instead of telling people that the situation that confronted St. Lucia was not unique to St. Lucia, and that all of the Caribbean was facing the same fate, it was Kenny Anthony that was on the backs of the people. That is what you said. And today, 10 months into government, you are singing a totally different tune. 10 months into government, you want to tell St. Lucians that things are tight. St. Lucia is not the only Caribbean island being faced with the financial challenges that we are encountering today. Mighty Trinidad and Tobago, with all their oil and natural gas, are experiencing some of the worst figures in the history of Trinidad and Tobago. The situation is equally bad in Barbados, to the extent that in recent years, Barbados has had to send home more than 3,000 civil servants. And investors are now packing their bags in Barbados, looking for other places to invest their money because the situation is critical in Barbados. And so the situation is bad across the Caribbean. But what sets apart the Caribbean jurisdictions that will stay afloat from the ones that are going to sink is the quality of leadership that you have. And that is what we provided under a St. Lucia Labour Party government. And I made the point earlier, Prime Minister, through you, Madam Speaker, that yours is a job that ought to be taken more seriously. It cannot be politics. It cannot be the vision and the objectives of the United Workers' Party anymore for you. And whereas, from my vantage point, it will be extremely difficult for some members of the government to move from the politics and assume an objective posture for the development of St. Lucia, the Prime Minister has no choice, but he has to lead by example. And when you can remove $700,000 from the estimates for the National Trust, there can be no justifiable reason that would make that acceptable. This is a free country. People have a right to voice their opinions, and the government must be prepared to listen to St. Lucians who will provide a different or an alternative standpoint to what you are postulating, what you are feeding, and what you are planning and what you want to execute. And that must remain at the heart of our democracy. The Prime Minister, after the elections, configured the largest cabinet in the history of our country. The biggest cabinet wage bill ever to be paid in the history of St. Lucia is being paid now. Where people who contested elections, notwithstanding glaringly that they do not have the skill set to manage departments and ministries, tokenism was at play. They were appointed as ministers, they get in the salary and the output. And if you are objective among yourselves, you will conclude in your quiet moments that there are a lot of persons in the cabinet who are woefully inadequate and cannot function as ministers. They are not able to function on the domestic front, and when they represent our country abroad, the reports that come back are embarrassing. And I don't mean to be personal, and this is not targeted at any one individual, but that is what we have at the moment, and this is something we must address. We must understand that we are only players in this process for a time. The next 10, 15, 20 years, the majority of persons in here will no longer be parliamentary representatives. And what we want, is to leave a record and a legacy that the next generation will be able to build on. And Madam Speaker, when a Prime Minister can equate the patrimony of our country to the credit rating, it is a sad state of affairs. And it is the same Prime Minister who said that a country should be run as a business. You have a CEO taking care of the business. And all CEOs are concerned about is the bottom line, the profit margin. And if they have to take decisions that are not popular just to increase profit, they will do it. A country cannot be likened to a business unless you are looking at cutting wastage, maximizing productivity, and things of that sort. But once you are going to equate the patrimony of your country to credit rating, I expect you to take decisions. I expect you to implement programs that will be inimical and dangerous and disadvantageous to poor people in this country. Madam Speaker, the reduction of subsidies on rice flour, etc. I remember when we took those decisions as a government, because we had tough decisions to make at the time. The member for Castries South East came in here, and I think, Madam Speaker, he was occupying the same seat that I'm occupying today, or maybe the one to my immediate left. And he told the Honorable House that he had encountered an old lady in Bexar. As a result of the reduction in the subsidies, the lady in Bexar could not have purchased not even a pound of rice. And that was backed up by another story told by the member for Mikunov, where she encountered a lady at the cash register who was short of $2, I think, at the time, and the lady had to take back the groceries because she didn't have $2. And I think it was the member for Library who said to her at the time, "You mean you didn't give the lady the $2? And there, Madam Speaker, yeah, what are you saying? Mikunov, yes, Mikunov. And there, Madam Speaker, they chided us because we did not remove the subsidies, you know. We only reduced on the subsidies because we were confronted by a very difficult situation which called for difficult and tough decisions to be made. But today, the Prime Minister, Madam Speaker, has been challenged by the Leader of the Opposition to come out and tell the country that the items that have been zero rated for VAT and have been exempted, that you are not going to remove them from the basket. And Madam Speaker, through you, I will have to call for the protection of the Speaker. And I understand your exuberance, Mr. Prime Minister, but the executive and the legislature are not the same. The Speaker is in charge. So if you want to stop me on a point of order, I will yield.
Madam Speaker, on a point of on a clarification, who's reduced the subsidies on rice and flour and sugar? So I don't know where the member from Dennery North is saying that. There's been no announcement of that at all. In fact, what I said in my presentation is that the prices remain the same. The prices for rice and for sugar have fallen below the market price. That's exactly what I said. Huh? Oh, okay, my apologies.
Yes, Madam Speaker. I said we, the St. Lucia Labour Party government, had tough decisions to make, and we reduced the subsidies on rice, sugar, and flour. And when we did, we were chided. But we were not afraid of making the tough decisions that we had to in the interest of this country. But the same persons who chided us and who criticized us, today they are the ones looking to put VAT on the backs of poor people on items that we said that we were going to make to zero rate and to exempt. So, Madam Speaker, we had no money to speak about when we were in government, but with a limited budget, we were able to build bridges, we were able to build schools, we were able to light up playing fields, we were able to provide laptop computers to the children of St. Lucia. We were able to give bursaries. We were able to increase the contribution to pensioners. We were able to provide youth and sports equipment to young people in this country. And Madam Speaker, all of what I've spoken about can be verified, can be checked, and the record is there for all to see. Madam Speaker, I now turn my attention to the Department of Youth Development and Sports, which I think is identified in the estimate as Head 54. With a total budget of $7.2 million, $5.6 million as recurrent expenditure, and a capital allocation of $1.6 million. With that amount, Madam Speaker, youth development as a line item under that head gets $170,000 through the Beckwith International Leadership Development Program, commonly known to people in the ministry as the Build. And the objective of the Build, as I would have stated in the previous budget, is really to train young people, Madam Speaker. And when the Build was implemented, it was really meant to train young leaders across communities in St. Lucia who would have assisted with, among other things, St. Lucia's hosting of the Commonwealth Youth Games at the time, but we know what the situation was with the Commonwealth Youth Games. And so I'm happy to see that the allocation has been retained, notwithstanding that St. Lucia will no longer be hosting the Commonwealth youth games. Madam Speaker, it is a sad day to see that the autonomy that was given to youth development and sports as a separate entity has been taken away, and that the portfolios of youth development and sports have been lost in a cluster arrangement where adequate attention, in my opinion, is not being placed on that particular portfolio. Madam Speaker, sports equipment, $100,000, and that money is expected to be raised through bond financing. I made the point earlier, the member for Beaufort North made the point earlier, as well as the member for Choiseul. The market is not very favorable for the sale of bonds, and so I am not very optimistic that the amount to be raised for sports equipment will be raised. And in any event, Madam Speaker, even if $100,000 is raised for the procurement of sports equipment, that can never be sufficient. $100,000 is not even enough to outfit St. Lucia's team for the Windward Islands secondary school games. That paltry amount is grossly insufficient, and so, Madam Speaker, the Ministry of Youth Development and Sports, or the department, will have to find monies from other sources. The lighting of recreational facilities, I noticed that there's a grant amount of $762,016 to be sourced from the Republic of China, Taiwan. And normally, Madam Speaker, from experience, once you have grant funding, and in particular grant funding from the ROCT, more often than not, that money is expected to come through, even if at times there may be delays. I recall in last year's estimate, an amount of $2.7 million was allocated for the lighting of recreational facilities. And during that time, we had earmarked 4 playing fields for lighting, namely the Canaries playing field, the Dennery playing field, the Fonhasso playing field, and the Choiseul playing field. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, through you, Madam Speaker, but I am almost certain that late last year, the Taiwanese embassy did present a check to the government of St. Lucia to execute the projects on the playing fields that I mentioned. But all that is reflected in the estimates this year is $762,000 for the lighting of recreational facilities. And based on experience and the work programs you would have executed before, this amount can only service 1 playing field. Madam Speaker, the lighting fixtures have been installed on the Canaries playing field. The lighting fixtures were installed and awaiting connection on the Dennery playing field. And you will ask, but how were we able to install the lighting fixtures on these playing fields prior to the Taiwanese government making the monies available? When St. Lucia was preparing to host the Commonwealth Youth Games, Cabinet mandated that a sync fund be created for the Commonwealth Youth Games. But it got to a stage where we had to inform the Commonwealth Games Federation that St. Lucia could not, because of financial difficulties, host the Commonwealth Youth Games. And so the money that was in the sync fund was used to light up the 2 playing fields that I mentioned, namely Canaries and Dennery South, with the view that when the Taiwanese check is made available, the money will be replaced at the National Lotteries Authority. But today, Madam Speaker, only 1 project is reflected by way of amount. It does not speak to which of the playing fields will be addressed. But I can recall very clearly, and there's documentation to substantiate what I am saying, that the Fonhasso playing field, the Canaries playing field, the Dennery playing field, and the Choiseul playing field were supposed to have been lit under this particular program. So, Madam Speaker, these would have complemented the 4 fields that we would have done. Philip Masley, Marsha, Ancillary, and Larissus in the Mabria Valley. The National Coaching Program, $69,501. Now, Madam Speaker, I have tried in my quiet moments to decipher what can we do with $69,000. I'm inclined to believe that maybe this is an amount to pay for the services of a coach who was recruited not too long ago. The Elite Athletes and Talent Identification Program, $500,000. Again, this is supposed to be funded through bonds. I need not reiterate the situation with bonds as it relates to our fiscal position, and so, Madam Speaker, I do not expect much money, much from that allocation to be raised to finance it in its entirety. So, the budget for the Ministry of Youth Development and Sports is pretty much the same as last year's, with a few minor variations. And so, Madam Speaker, the 7.2 million allocated for sports can never be adequate to sustain any semblance of proper youth development and sports programming. And so, as happened under the St. Lucia Labour Party government, I expect the Ministry of Youth Development and Sports, or the Department of Youth Development and Sports if you prefer, to get the bulk of its funding from the National Lotteries Authority. And the National Lotteries Authority is an entity that was created by an Act of Parliament. And it states, Madam Speaker, that all monies generated from the National Lotteries Authority must be used for youth development and sports programming. So, the Ministry of Youth Development and Sports is in a very unique position. There are some agencies that have no alternative to what the Ministry of Finance makes available to them. And a lot of what we were able to do, the playing fields that we were able to light up, the playing fields that we were able to surface, the courts that we were able to rehabilitate, the equipment that we were able to deliver and distribute in schools and across communities, the support that we were able to give to elite athletes, the community pavilions that we were able to construct, the community programs that we were able to fund, the bulk of the funding came from the National Lotteries Authority. We constructed community pavilions and changing rooms in Canneries, Ancillary, Marigot, Fonassault, Larissos. We worked on multipurpose courts, Corinth, Babonneau, Bellevue Vieux-Fort, Montgouge, Vieux-Fort Town, Tirocher Castries, and so on. But, Madam Speaker, it was very, very disturbing when the member for Gros-Islet came into this honorable house not too long ago, and he tried to give not just members in this honorable chamber the impression that somebody had mismanaged, or under my ministerial watch, lotteries monies had been mismanaged, and that we had done wrong with monies from the National Lotteries Authority. But, Madam Speaker, every single dollar, every single cent that was spent by the St. Lucia National Lotteries can be substantiated. The National Lotteries Authority, on a monthly basis, collects by way of revenue about $600,000. Roughly $200,000 in the form of license fees from CBN, Canadian banknotes, and roughly $400,000 from Cage. And Cage is the company with the VLTs, or the video lottery terminals you have in the shops all across St. Lucia. CBN is the company that deals with Super 6, Scratch, Lucky Free, and those games. And on an average, Madam Speaker, the National Lotteries Authority would net more than $500,000 every month. So that after elections, when the ministers in the cluster went in and they said that the National Lotteries Authority was broke, and I remember the member for Ancillary Canneries telling me that the Lotteries Authority is broke, there's no money. What did we do with the money? And he was asking me that at a time when the National Lotteries Authority ought to have been the most liquid of all the statutory corporations and entities that we have in this country. Madam Speaker, the monies of the National Lotteries Authority are saved at two commercial banks, the Bank of St. Lucia and Scotiabank. One of these accounts, Madam Speaker, of the accounts of the National Lotteries Authority, one account is referred to as the minister's account. And it is referred to as the minister's account for only one reason. It is not money belonging to the minister. It is not money meant to be spent to benefit the minister. But it is an account that will help expedite funding decisions for sports programs and situations as they arise. So that when the member for Micoud North can come with a proposal at the last minute and ask for $7,000 for the Gail Rigobert netball competition in Micoud North, I will not ask her to report to the board, where the board will take 3 months to approve her proposal. I will approve it right there on my desk and give a directive to the lotteries that they have to facilitate that for the honourable member. And the same was done for the Lotteries Independence Football Competition. And when you have a competition, a tape ball competition on Good Friday in Forestier, it is the same process that we use to provide the funding. So when they give you the impression that lotteries money was used in a manner that was not acceptable, Madam Speaker, it is the Prime Minister who used the word very recently, calling very renowned citizens of this country hypocrites. Who are the real hypocrites today? Who are the hypocrites today? Who are the hypocrites today? Madam Speaker, yes, on a Good Friday, the same day you can't get nominated to contest elections, it's the same day that you have your tip ball competition. But I always respect elected members. I don't care which party you represent. I respect elected members. And that if there are resources at my disposal as a minister, I will go out of my way to provide support and to help parliamentary representatives. But these days, and I don't expect you to reciprocate, because I've heard the comments. I don't expect you to reciprocate, because my people will cry. You have said that they're going to cry. Then enough people are expected to cry, because in the majority, they voted for the St. Lucia Labour Party in the elections of 2016. And there will be no political fallout according to the member for Grosile. You know why? Because again, the majority are supporters of the St. Lucia Labour Party. So when you want to create the impression that I, or under my ministerial watch, lottery money, or monies belonging to the National Lotteries Authority was squandered, you need to think again. That is not me, that is not my character, and these are not the things I condone. And that is very important, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'm hoping that all of what was criticized in terms of what the Lotteries Authority's money was used for will not be repeated. So that when Laverne Spencer is in Norway, Helsinki, alone, representing St. Lucia without the requisite staff, the psychologist, the coach, the doctor, and she's competing against internationals who have a full contingent of support staff with them, I have no regrets, Madam Speaker, in causing the National Lotteries Authority to wire money up here to provide a comfort level that will make her represent our country to the best of her ability. And that is what I use lotteries money for. So don't come here and make it seem as if somebody did something. When you peruse the records of the lotteries, I did not refurbish bus shelters in Babono with lottery money. I did not give tuition support to party hacks to go to university. That's not what I used it for. I found those there in the records. But that's not my politics. I came to correct what was wrong. I never came into the house with documents saying this is what I found. That is not my style. So it is wrong and it is unfair to give the impression that somebody was doing something wrong with monies. And I understand why very early in the configuration of the cabinet, people were beginning to fight. There were squabbles. Who wanted lotteries? There's something at the lotteries you think that you can benefit from? Devon Nick on social media, United Pack, calling me by name on social media, as if to suggest, but as they say in cricket, I know where my off stump is. I will not play at that. That's a wide. You have to be a little more direct if you want to engage me on these subjects. That is not me. And many of you there know the smell of corruption. Even if it doesn't come from your person, you're close enough to it. And I want you to check yourselves, and then you'll understand precisely what I'm trying to say. So, Madam Speaker, with the time left, there's a lot I need to say about the constituency of Dennery North. Dennery North is a very, very special part of St. Lucia. The people, as I alluded to earlier on, Madam Speaker, on the 6th of June, had a choice to make. And they decided that they were going to stay with the St. Lucia Labour Party. And there was one key factor for that decision being made by the people. And that is they were satisfied with the performance of the government, they were satisfied with the performance of the representative. And as I go through the constituency, a lot of the party hacks, Madam Speaker, I'm going to tie every word I speak about my constituency with the different heads in the estimate. And people ask you, qui ça Shawn a fait? Qui ça Labour a fait? What have I done? He did nothing. I can tell you one thing. When you're politically blind and you're biased, it's a very, 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 very bad thing to combat, you know. When people cannot see objectively. When people will not appreciate good for what it is. When they have to blindly and with regard for nothing else champion the cause of their party, it can make very smart people look stupid. It can make very educated people look ordinary. But that will not determine me, Madam Speaker. I am focused. I know where I'm heading. I am here to represent the best interests of the people of Dennery North. Moi, à Caille Parlement pour représenter Jean Dennery North. Jean Dennery North qui travaille oued, les figues de l'argent. Pour mener l'argent figue dans un pays ça. Pour faire Rosodam, pour Bill Rodney Bay, pour faire Waterfront, pour faire Chimay Tunnel. C'est l'argent figue nous qui fait. C'est l'argent figue nous qui paye docteur, et teacher, et si Rodia, figue pas ça y est. Moi, pas ni pièce apologique à point. Si moi, en un gouvernement, et que moi, point, et que moi, demandé, et que moi, goumé pour ça, moi, quoi, c'est moun Dennery North la bousin. We will not be bystanders in the national development process anymore. Prior to 2011, 5 years, everywhere in St. Lucia you went, there was a Taiwanese project happening. Dennery North, the hardworking people of Dennery North who had made their contribution and given a fair effort to the development of this country had to watch. And everywhere else that something happening that we're not getting. So that when I come in this parliament, or I happen to sit in a cabinet, I will grab with both hands. I will take whatever I can. And the people of Dennery North will be the ones benefiting. Well, you know about that because you are with people who have that tendency. I'm not like that. Madam Speaker, Anto they ask, qui ça y a fait? Qui ça y a fait Dennery North? Vous savez qui ça m'a fait? A drainage project in Tamazo. A concrete road in Tamazo. Concrete road phases 1 and 2 on Le Monde Grand Rivière. A Dibonnet Bridge and Road. An Alba Bridge on the Grand Rivière Main Road. Courts for the children of the Grand Rivière daycare who were sleeping on the floor. New Village Road, concrete road from the highway way to the back of the Richmond Combined School in New Village. An enhanced school feeding program at the I have to campaign because you have a tracking device on me. School feeding, well, I don't know if you tapped my phone yet, but I have to campaign. An enhanced school feeding program at the Richmond Combined School. In Lower Grand Ravine, Madam Speaker, we were able to build a brand new concrete road next to the Mumbellies leading to Sophia's house. In Grand Ravine, leading to the Charles family, a brand new concrete road. In Grand Ravine, higher up next to Rodney's Hall, a brand new concrete road. We completed rehabilitation of the Grand Ravine playing field. The Richmond Lariso sidewalk, a project that is very, very close to my heart, Madam Speaker. That particular stretch of road, Madam Speaker, has been the scene of many accidents where people, churchgoers, elderly, school children have had to compete for space on the road with vehicular traffic. And there have been many instances, Madam Speaker, where the ambulance has come into contact with people, well, vehicles, and the ambulances had to be sourced to take them to the hospital. We have had to rehabilitate the Lapel playing field. We've done a drainage project in Apatat, Lapel. Drainage works in Gadet. The fencing of the Gadet daycare. Equipment and financial support for the Gadet daycare. More than $4 million worth of upgrade works at the Larissos playing field. Drainage in Montego Bay, Oleon. A brand new concrete road in New Jack. A brand new concrete road to the back of the Oleon post office. Footpaths in Oleon. Lower Dennery Rivière next to Adol, we were able to build a concrete road there, Madam Speaker. A bridge on a road to Miss Adeline, or a gentleman who's better known as Betlamp. We did that, Madam Speaker. Austin Hill Road Phase 1, and I've said before that for about 10 years, the Austin Hill Road was on the work program of the then Ministry of Communications and Works, as well as the Ministry of Infrastructure. And it was a problem. It was a traumatic experience for banana farmers and persons who lived at the top of the community. As soon as we got into office, in quick time, we were able to complete phase 1 of that road. And phase 2, Madam Speaker, the contracts were already signed, and there was a change of government, and we do not know the fate of the contractors in terms of whether they will be allowed to continue or whether the contracts will be taken away from them and be given to supporters or persons whom they perceive to be supporters of their party. Drainage and retaining wall at Austin Hill. River Wall and River Stabilization in Pompiti. The Upper Belmont Concrete Road. Central Belmont, a concrete road. Lower Belmont in the Varsity area, a concrete road. Reconstruction of the Dennery Rivier Combined School. Medical assistance to close to 100 constituents. CXC payments for the children of parents who could not have afforded. And there was always a double whammy with that, Madam Speaker. Once you are in a situation where the child cannot pay CXC, rest assured that same parent will come back to you because of his or her inability to meet with the graduation fees. And the current vice principal of the Clinton Mason Memorial Secondary School will tell you about the conversations we've had. Because as the parents came into my constituency office, one at 2 o'clock, another at 4, one the following day, just to save time and to make this a more efficient process, as to call the school and ask who are the children who cannot pay. And I did not take into consideration whether they were from Dennery North or other parts of the East Coast. I facilitated those I could have facilitated. Over 300 scholarships and tuition support packages, Madam Speaker. Although in recent times, when the allocation came from the SSDF for back-to-school assistance, it was a losing candidate and his operatives handling that particular package. I never saw it. I had absolutely no input in terms of who deserved and who should have gotten. But that is not my politics. And every MP in this House today who was in opposition will tell you that when they had to deal with me, I never, not for once, did I disrespect them or did I ignore whatever request they brought before me. I don't necessarily have to expect you to reciprocate, but I am not like that, Madam Speaker. That is not me. So, Madam Speaker, I have responded to all the persons who ask, qui ça is a fait? Qui ça Shawn a fait? Ça c'est tac, c'est ba la moi a fait. Et la ni pli moi a fait. Da moi quitter pour l'autre débat en cas consit. Madam Speaker, Head 41, Agriculture, Fisheries, Natural Resources and Cooperatives. Agriculture is a vital component of the local economy.
Honourable Member, you have 15 more minutes within which to complete your presentation.
Is it 50, Madam Speaker? Thank you, Madam Speaker. I was making the point that agriculture is a vital component of the local economy. It has done wonders for the development of our country, and more specifically for the Dennery North constituency. Fig ek agricole, j'ai fait bon bail by pays cette ici en temps qui passé. Ek jik en jour qu'aujourd'hui, Fig ka still fait bon bagay, ka mette l'argent en poche et ka let tab Jean en constituency moi et puis l'autre place en cette ici. I represent an agricultural constituency, one that has made a substantial contribution to the development of this country, and I alluded to that earlier on. Madam Speaker, I am aware, after having perused the estimates of last year and this year, and after having had discussions with senior personnel in the Ministry of Agriculture, that there were programs earmarked for the Mabuya Valley that have been removed or redirected to other parts of this country. And you know what is most painful about this, Madam Speaker? This is happening at a time when we have a constituent and somebody who has a vested political interest in the Mabuya Valley sitting inside the cabinet and allowing that to happen without raising objection. L'année programme agricole qui nous a parlé about, qui est supposé fait à Dennery North, Madam Speaker. Mais quand le gouvernement ça l'a venu, il a tiré ces programmes ça là, et quand pile ces programmes ça a calé en l'autre commune en cette ici, en particulier Babono. Et ça qui a trois cas c'est moins plus about ça, nous n'ayons un homme qui nie l'intérêt politique en Dennery North, qui a assis dans le cabinet, qui a gardé ces bails ça a fait, et qui passe à faire rien pour empêcher ou pour dire well, tout par après tout quitter Yondé et quitter le bail. And Madam Speaker, this is what happens. And so I am not surprised when I see lump sums that are not adequately broken down to reflect the programs that they will be funding. The Banana Productivity Improvement Project, 13.8 million. pièce là, un gouvernement qui a dépensé pour aider les femmes africaines. Yon se moun qui a toujours venu de exporter le programme ça, c'est moi. Puis moi, il y a pile moun constituency moi. Qui ça qui vote ban moi, même que ça qui pas vote ban moi, qui a planté figue, et qui un jour qu'aujourd'hui qui dépend les figues. So pièce support, gouvernement flambeau, ou pièce gouvernement qui a bail femme figue, ça c'est un bail moi qui a supporté Madame Speaker, et ça c'est bail moi qui a dit la vérité. The Dennery Water Redevelopment Project, 10.5 million, still on the head 41, agriculture, fisheries, natural resources and cooperatives. Madame Speaker, situation de l'eau à Dennery North, c'est bail moi a parlé about toutes les mois venir au Parlement. Tout partout moi aller moi parler about situation de l'eau. Et ça c'est un problème nous avons pour combien d'années. Mais nous pour première fois en gros démarche qu'a tapé point pour adresser le problème ça là. Et je dis à moi pour l'occasion pour y mettre un pile monde qui a fait possible pour le programme ça là qu'a tapé quoi implémenté. Moi voulais y mettre membre parlement pour vieux fort puis votre South qui c'est le premier ministre. Là moi aller parler avec moi dit la situation glo avalé à mauvais. Il dit moi nous faire un bail. Il ban moi assurance là nous faire un bagage. Et il parlait et puis membre pour affaires étrangères à cabinet là, ça c'est membre parlement pour la Boui qui c'était ministre qui a responsabilité pour external affairs. Et qui allait et qui parlait avec le gouvernement Mexique. Et qui est d'accord qu'il y a 5 million US dollars. 5 million US dollars. So c'est là en sorti. Mais là, il fait study, un ministre, Dr. Fletcher, en tant que c'est Sustainable Development, yo ouais, là, ça n'a pas de gagner assez. And so, we had an application before the Caribbean Development Bank. There was a change of government, and to your credit, Prime Minister, through you, Madam Speaker, and the member for Babonneau, the project was upheld, and the project has started, and I am relieved that once and for all, the people of Dennery North will be getting safe drinking water. Madam Speaker, ça me pas vle, c'est pour moun venir ici et faire cette mission quoi, c'est yo qui responsabilité, qui ni responsabilité, c'est pour la petite yo qui fait projet à café. You will stop many projects that you will find were already in the pipeline. Many projects will stop. But I'm very grateful on behalf of my constituents that you've decided to stick to the water project. Madam Speaker, Head 47, Physical Planning. PROUD is a program that was implemented by the Central Labour Party. The Olio community has been under the radar of PROUD for some time. On a une situation Olio que c'est Kaila fait de manière qu'on y comblé ensemble. Et qu'on y belgo Kai qui n'y a chai valet. Mais il n'y a pas de papier terre et qu'il passe à servir Kaila qu'on valait pour aller devant la banque, pour prendre loan, pour voir ici à l'école ou pour acheter pièces bagaille au besoin. Et c'est pour raison ça qui fait PROUD aller au Lyon, bonnet depuis qu'il a commencé. But it is proving to be very problematic and it is time consuming. But I'm hoping that soon from today, the PROUD project will bring sort of relief to the people of Olio as we anticipate. Two other communities in my constituency, Madam Speaker, still on the Head 47 Physical Planning, are Belmont and Grand Ravine. The the occupants of those, the residents in those communities, Madam Speaker, are occupying lands belonging to the Crown. And I'm hoping that the PROUD project, that some of the initial discussions we would have had when I was in the cabinet, will continue and that some effort will be made, Madam Speaker, to address the situation with respect to those persons. Mounikai, en l'état gouvernement Belmont et puis Guavin, même qu'on au Lyon, et que pas ni papier terre, et que passe après pièce loan, pour service de Kaila pour prendre loan. Et que moi, commande le gouvernement pour adresser ça, parce que nous avons commencé la discussion, les montants dans le cabinet. Et que moi, je support le gouvernement, Madam Speaker, les venir pour ça. Madam Speaker, Head 53, Health and Wellness, Primary Healthcare Services Program. Health Center la ressource tapé brûlé. Lundi 9 mars 2015. On Monday, March the 9th, 2015, Madam Speaker, the Larissus Health Center was destroyed by fire. Patient records were destroyed and equipment destroyed. In the budget after consultation with then Prime Minister Dr. Anthony, an allocation of $371,000 was in the budget. It was not money that had to be raised through bonds, grant funding for the Larissus Health Center. What did you all do with that money? Was that money used to pay consultants on the St. Jude's project? Was that money used to finance traveling for ministers? Because before you got into the third quarter, you had already wiped out the travel budget. What did you do with that money? And in addition to not doing the project, your power health center, et puis la hanou qui est là. Yo ka venir kay consit rodia, et puis un budget neuf. Et quoi ka dit reconstruction of Lotteries Health Center, là ni $0 and 0 cents. Les c'est pas zo qui met la han là. Zo hen la han là pour un health center. Zo tiye ex jodia zo ka venir dit ou pas mettre pièce là han. Et vous savez qui ça problème là yé? Grand moun gadet Dennery au Lyon ti la ressource. Qui te ka aller la ressource pour un docteur à chama yoni pour aller jik wi fond. Et ce docteur a complain Madam Speaker because il pas right et qui pas bon en pièce qualité health practice pour un docteur qui avait plus que 100 moun dans une journée. Congestion at the Richmond Health Center. But Madam Speaker, again, there is somebody from Dennery North who makes the rounds, who gives contracts on behalf of the government, who implements projects and takes photos to put on social media as if he is the parliamentary rep and you sit in cabinet and you allow that. And if there can be 5 people in the cabinet from Dennery North, I'll be happy, because at the end of the day, if the service or service to the people is our primary focus, all of us should be happy when something is done for the community. Madam Speaker, I knew it was a sad day today when I saw the member for Dennery South, of all persons, providing speaking or coaching somebody in Parliament in terms of how to deliver a budget and presentation. You found your voice. You found your voice. Continue to interrupt the best you can. Madam Speaker, Head 43, Infrastructure, Ports and Energy. There's a line item, the Tillarisus Road. And whereas it is in the budget, I know that the Tillarisus Road has been completed, and the amount reflected in the estimates is just payment for what was known as a finance bill project. Yo di, let me faire chimé Tillarisus là, that me pa bay contract pour Jean Tillarisus. Mais yo pa comprendre that contract ça c'est de ça ka créer a finance bill. Ça nous mean pas finance bill. Finance bill mean that yon moun ne pou venir puis $700,000 pour faire chimé. Gouvernement pas ka mettre pièce là en chimé. Ou ka faire chimé, ou ka mettre là ou ka faire chimé. Et peut-être yon l'année, 2 l'année pour faire chimé, gouvernement ka commencer payer. Now comment y a moins ça bail un moun contract. En l'air l'argent yon moun. Il a prêté en banque presque $1 million pour faire chimé. Ou quoi moins ça aller et que l'autre moun bail un contract l'autre moun non. Personne moun qui ne peut-être pas faire ça. Mais yo a une chance pour les politiques. Et so yo di moun that mo pa bay moun contract on les chimé Tillarisus. Madam Speaker, the Richmond Ring Road has been a problematic road for some time.
Honourable Member, you have, just to remind you, you have 5 more minutes now within which to complete your presentation.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Richmond Ring Road has been a sore point for some time now. And the problem we have there, Madam Speaker, is that the road is below the level of the riverbed. And as a result, there is always flooding and stagnant water. And it makes it very difficult for us to rehabilitate this road. But the staff from the Ministry of Infrastructure, although they don't tour the constituency with me, they choose to do it with other people, Madam Speaker. The staff that I would have engaged prior to the elections, I am hoping that they will continue to work diligently to ensure that we come up with a solution for that particular problem. The Austin Hill Road, Madam Speaker, as I said, phase 1 would have been completed. I'm hoping that we can get phase 2 completed in quick time. Local government, culture and creative industries, Head 57. Madam Speaker, council was elected. I had very little input. When written to submit a name, I submitted the name. I was told that I had missed the deadline. The St. Lucia Labour Party took appropriate action, and we had to consult our lawyers, and in record time, my nominee was appointed to the Dennery North Constituency Council. Madam Speaker, There are a group of very professional people serving on council, notwithstanding the fact that I did not select them, but there are quite a few hardworking professionals whom I believe have the interests of the community at heart, and I have pledged my support to them, and I'm willing to work with them. But the one thing I will not stand for is when they take the losing candidate of the United Workers' Party and get him to posture as the rep. I did say to the Minister for Local Government once at a function that because this was her first official function, and given the fact, and we have to acknowledge these things, she was my permanent secretary not too long before the election. She came to a function for the swearing-in of councillors. I am at the head table with the member for Dennery South, quite rightly so, the parish priest and the permanent secretary. And then she brings the losing candidate to the head table, and the president of the Senate is in the audience. So I asked, what is the individual doing there? If you want to recognize government officials, then the president of the Senate, who is a much higher ranking officer, should be at the head table too. I did not walk away, as I said, because that was the first outing. Any opportunity or any attempt to try and derail my efforts as parliamentary rep or not give me what I believe I deserve in that capacity, I will do what I have to do. Madam Speaker, CDP, a lot has been said about CDP in the news, but I'm still very optimistic, given the fact that the member for Castries South East alone is presiding over $102 million in the budget. I am very optimistic that given his record of equity, that he will look at Dennery North in a very favorable manner, and that some of the projects to be executed on the CDP will be executed. Madam Speaker, I want to thank you for your patience and your indulgence. I want to thank members on both sides of the House for your cooperation, and very importantly, Madam Speaker, and most importantly, I want to thank God for the strength to be able to continue to discharge my responsibilities in this Parliament as the member for Dennery North. I know it will be a very difficult journey, but given that I have the right people around me, Madam Speaker, I have every reason to believe that I will continue to serve well, and that if the elections are called, as we expect they will be, before time, that Dennery North will once again support the St. Lucia Labour Party. Madam Speaker, I want to thank you, and I want to wish everyone a pleasant evening.